Universe Makers, First Scroll, written and narrated by C. Taylor. Please review the description for trigger warnings to make sure this is content that you are comfortable with. Chapter 4. Hannah stared at her books. The words blurred from the constant flow of tears that still fought all her attempts to stop them. She wiped the freshest set away, leaned forward on her elbows, and tried to make sense of Religions of the Middle East chapter she'd been assigned that day. Muffled sounds came through the vent in her room. The senior girls' common room was filling again. Anna ignored the pull to go and listen, to hear how the other girls really felt about her as they talked freely, thinking she couldn't hear. Every time she tried before, she hoped they felt differently about her, but she just always ended up crying. She grabbed her headphones to drown out the noise until she realized she was already crying. Why not use it to her advantage? Maybe they felt differently after seeing her upset. Anna wiped her eyes again and leaned back in her chair. She pushed away from the desk, went over to the wall, turned around, and sank to the floor beside the vent. Taking a deep breath, she reached over, put her finger on the lever, and flipped it up. Sarah's voice was the first and always the loudest Hannah could hear. What was her problem tonight? Did you see her crying? I don't think I've ever seen her cry. Honestly, if I looked like that when I cried, I wouldn't do it either. I didn't think she could get any uglier. But wow, another girl added. I wish my father would get off my back about her. It's easier to make friends with a fish, and they are way more interesting, Sarah complained. Is he still threatening to cut off your allowance unless you're officially her friend? One of the other girls asked. It's getting worse. Now I have to get some kind of useful information on the newest Meisha Corporation acquisition, or I don't get to go to Paris this summer. Several sympathetic groans echoed through the vent. Hannah flipped the lever closed, and the voices were muffled again. One good thing that came from listening, her tears stopped. Hannah quieted into a numb calm as she took a quick inventory of her life. 1. Her loving family, all dead. 2. New family won't talk to her now because she'd been so completely selfish. 3. Her conniving friend seemed to know more about the company Hannah had been working so hard to run, leaving only 4. So-called friends were nice to her only because they were forced to by their parents. Hannah took a deep breath and laid her head back against the wall. Her spacious private suite started to feel really small and suffocating. All the painful little parts of her life she kept separate merged together. The crushing weight made her feel like her whole world was collapsing on her. She looked up at the open window and decided she needed some fresh air. Moments later, Hannah wandered the small outdoor courtyard at the center of her school. The crisp night air washed over her, soothing her raw nerves a little and clearing some of the pain and shame. Her mind was trying to come up with some way to fix the only item on her list she had any control over, her new family. How could she have failed so miserably tonight? She was always so careful, kept everything on her tablet, and updated her schedule constantly. Why hadn't she updated it when she had it in her hands that Monday? Catherine's words echoed in her head, and she knew she'd been right. Hannah really didn't want to go shopping with Catherine, and the only wiggle room in her schedule was her favorite part of the week. Part of her probably did conveniently forget. Hannah leaned against her favorite tree. If she couldn't fix this problem, she had no hope of ever successfully running her great-grandfather's company. Hannah had to think. One thought made her smile. She could use all of Catherine's Wyndham weekly tips and have massive amounts of extra time to spend with Catherine. All she had to figure out was some way to keep from bawling her eyes out whenever she was around her. She could always tell Catherine the truth, that she looked, acted, and sounded exactly like her mother, and that in turn made her feel like she would shatter into a million pieces every time she was near. Hannah knew the truth would just hurt Catherine and most likely push her away for good. Of course, all the mistakes she'd made by not telling her may have already done the same thing. She glanced across the courtyard and noticed all the instructors' offices were dark. She rolled her eyes. If all the instructors were gone for the evening, it must have been much later than she thought. Way too late for her to not be working on the mountain of homework back in her suite. Then a terrifying idea came to mind. Hannah tried to ignore it, but it refused to leave, and the more she thought it through, the less terrifying it seemed, and the more incredibly smart it became. She went over it one more time, went through every detail one by one. Not only could she do it, it wouldn't even be hard, and it would take care of two problems at the same time. It would just take the use of some skills she swore to herself she wouldn't use again. If Dr. Miller didn't have time for her, what harm would it do to look around her now deserted office and hopefully find the answers she wanted? All she needed was the use of a couple of slightly naughty tricks she'd learned during her years in foster care and make sure she wasn't caught until after she got the information she needed. That way, Catherine would be forced to come to the administrator's office for some disciplinary action and be thrilled. She would most likely get expelled from Wyndham, but getting into another school would be easy. There were few that would turn down a Mesha even with a tarnished record. Maybe at her new school she'd be able to find a friend that wasn't forced to be nice to her. The more she thought about it, the more Hannah couldn't see a downside to any of it. Hannah pushed away from the tree, brushed off her sweater, and headed back to her suite to change. Officially, it would look like billionaires Hannah Mesha Benner was going to bed, but foster child Hannah Johnson was going to have some fun tonight. 30 minutes later, Hannah moved slowly up the long, dark hall. Her hair was pulled back into a tight ponytail. She was dressed in her black spandex workout pants and black turtleneck shirt, black soft-soled and completely silent climbing shoes. She kept to the shadows as she carefully made her way to the office she needed. She watched the hall cameras and timed her moves, making sure she wouldn't be seen. Yet. Two more doors and she'd be there. She ducked into the doorway of the closest office and watched. The camera just in front of her scanned toward her. As it turned closer, she leaned her head back, hiding it behind the shallow recess in front of the door, counted to 5, then slipped to the next doorway. Same process, then skipped to the next. Bingo, she made it to Dr. Miller's door. She watched the camera, ducked her head, counted to 5, then bent down this time. She took the pen she slipped in her hair and went to work on the locked door. Her eyes weren't as good as they had been the last time she'd done this, but luckily she could have done it with her eyes closed. Before the camera could loop around again, Hannah felt the lock give, and she slipped inside the office just in time. She closed the door quickly before the camera could see the movement, but stopped at the last moment to slowly and silently close it in case a guard was on patrol nearby. Hannah concentrated so much on closing the door just right she didn't notice anything else until it was closed, then froze. Something was really wrong. The office should be dark, but a strange green light reflected off the door in front of her. The light was way too bright for Hannah to hope Dr. Miller didn't see her. She cringed, braced for the angry, horrible words the instructor would start yelling at her any minute. Everything remained silent behind her. Her arms started to prickle with fear as she slowly turned around, expecting to see Dr. Miller glaring at her. A strange mist billowed around her as she moved, thick like smoke from a fire, but it didn't burn her lungs. What could possibly be causing this, she wondered a moment until she realized the mist was so thick she could barely see her hand in front of her face. Hannah breathed a sigh of relief. Whatever Dr. Miller was doing, it was hiding the fact that Hannah was there at all. Hannah silently turned around to sneak out. This little adventure would definitely need to wait for another night. She finished turning back around and reached. The door should have been right in front of her. Nothing even brushed by her fingers when her arms were completely stretched out straight. She turned a little more, hoping she just miscalculated how much she needed to turn, and reached again. Still nothing. Confused and disoriented, she started waving her hand and taking steps, trying to find something she could use to get her bearings. Dr. Miller, she finally called, suddenly feeling more scared of the freaky green mist than she was of the unpleasant instructor. Still nothing. No sound around her, nothing brushing under her waving hands no matter where she stepped or where she reached. Dr. Miller, I need your help, she pleaded. She took another blind step and was about to call out again. You witch! The scream came from somewhere behind her before something hard slammed against her head. Everything went black.